For the past several centuries, reports of a giant winged creature stalking the skies have popped up across the United States. An old legend of a beast said to be so large, the flap of its wings could explode with the sound of thunder and cause lightning to shoot out of its eyes. For hundreds of years, the Native Americans would watch the skies, hoping to stay out of sight of the bird who could easily grab and fly off with them. Please join us in this episode as we talk about the ancient Thunderbird. Welcome everyone to Moonlight Lore. I'm your host, Jordan Hopkins. Today we'll be talking about the legendary bird known as the Thunderbird. For hundreds of years, the Native Americans of the United States have passed down stories of a ginormous bird known to bring storms and thunder wherever it flew. They revered it as a god of life, bringing rain and storms to their otherwise dry crops. But like with any other ancient god, it could easily bring on death if not shown the proper respect. This magnificent bird's story begins far back, hundreds of years, with two men traveling in the northeast of America. The two had set off to discover where thunder comes from and ended up on top of a great mountain with darting clefts. One of the men, Passamaquoddies, crossed one of the deep clefts. As he turned around to help his friend cross the cleft, a sudden gust of wind appeared, causing his friend to lose his balance and fall to his death. As Passamaquoddies continued on his quest up the mountain, he found a group of men playing a game. As Passamaquoddies approached the men, they became startled and ran inside their wigwams. Seconds later, the men came running back outside with wings as their arms and leapt off the side of the mountain, soaring away. Passamaquoddies knew this was the home of the Thunderbird and confronted the elders of the camp for guidance. The elders agreed to help him by placing Passamaquoddies into a giant stone motor, crushing his bones into the shape of the Thunderbird and giving him wings. The elders told him to leap from the mountain and fly, but to stay away from the trees as they would kill him. Passamaquoddies ran off the ledge of the mountain, stretched out his wings, and became the Thunderbird. For generations, stories like Passamaquoddies and the Thunderbird were passed down from elders to their offspring. Traditions and storytelling make up the culture of all Native American tribes. To make sense of the world around them, our ancestors needed to have stories to explain how things were. Thunder and lightning were a mystery. The people in ancient times had no scientific way of explaining these particular events, so they needed to create stories and creatures, like the Thunderbird, to explain these events to the more curious members of their groups. But could some of these fantastical stories have some truth behind them? Could the Thunderbird be a real creature, still flying in our skies in the present day? Some believe this is more than just a possibility, but is very much a reality to our hidden world. If we take a deeper look into the origin story of the Thunderbird and Passamaquoddies' quest, we may be able to narrow down a possible location of where it all began. In the story, there is mention of wigwams, which is a type of round, dome hut used by many different tribes in the northeastern United States. Tribes in the southwestern United States call their huts wickiups, so simply looking into regional terminology, it could be safe to assume the Thunderbird origin story takes place in the northeastern United States. With the region being narrowed down to the northeast, looking for a great mountain like in the story, we can look for one in particular in the Appalachians. Mount Katahdin, the highest mountain in the state of Maine, has a summit named Knife's Edge, a dangerous hike for those traversing it in the strong winds. Falling down one of the clefts can easily lead a careless hiker to injury or death. This could be the area of the mountain where Passamaquoddies' friend had fallen to his death, leaving Passamaquoddies alone on the mountain. The final clue as to narrowing down the location of the Thunderbird origin can be found in the name of the mountain itself. In the story, Passamaquoddy is seeking the Great Mountain to which the thunder resides. Mount Katahdin is the name that we know it by, but to the local Penobscot Indian tribe, the name they had given it was the Greatest Mountain. Throughout the many years of life on the continent, stories of other winged beasts flying in the skies have been popping up for some time now. Some dating so far back along with the Thunderbird like the Paisa, and others being more recent like the Mothman. Unknown flying creatures have been in our skies longer than most care to believe. Occurrences of the Thunderbird, as old as the legend is, still show up through different times in our history. It seems this is one legend that will not die. Moving forward in time to the 1890s, an appearance of a creature similar to the Thunderbird made its way into Arizona when two cowboys witnessed a giant bird-like creature soaring in the skies above their herd of cattle. The two shot at it and brought the creature down. It was made note that although this creature looked like a ginormous bird, it wasn't one. They reported it as having no feathers at all, and with a head similar to an alligator. The pair of cowboys dragged the creature back into the town of Tombstone, where the locals determined it was no kind of bird, but resembled more of a pterodactyl. Another version of the story comes to us from a man named Harry Macleod, who claimed to have known the two cowboys from when he was a boy. The story he tells is the cowboys didn't actually kill and capture the creature. The cowboys merely shot at the large flying beast, but missed. With their horses now spooked and difficult to handle to give chase to the creature, the men returned into town to relay what they had seen. Their description of the bird was less precise, with them being so far from the creature, but they did say it was much smaller than the first description given in the other version of the story. Cases like the Tombstone dinosaur might give us credence. There could still be giant creatures, thought to have been extinct, flying, hidden in the skies somewhere. Though it could also be said, the imaginative minds of those in the past were much more open to fantastical stories than the scientific minds we've developed in today's society. Another story of a possible Thunderbird sighting moves us closer to present-day Illinois in 1948. On April 9th, a family living out on a farm claimed that all members of the family witnessed a monster of a bird, larger than an airplane, flying across the sky and over the trees out of sight. Later that same day, a delivery truck driver stated he too saw a ginormous bird while out on his route. Then, a former Army colonel, along with the head of the Western Military Academy, saw the creature as well, and they were shocked at the sheer size of it. The next day, several more witnesses came forward claiming they too saw the bird the day before, with one man claiming he thought he was first seeing a plane, but realized what it really was when his wings started flapping. Later in the month, on the 24th of April, flight instructors at a nearby airport in Alton took notice of an incredible bird flying at what they claimed was 500 feet in the air, but still casting a shadow the same size of what a Piper Cub plane would make at that same height. Around the same time as these sightings were occurring in Illinois, residents of the state of Missouri were reporting sightings of giant birds in such great amount, the mayor of St. Louis was pressured to do something about these birds. The mayor instructed local wildlife officials to set up traps to catch these giant flying creatures. A few days after the traps were set, officials started to notice blue heron tracks in the dirt, and although some were dissatisfied with the answer, the official report states that large birds spotted flying in the area were just that. Perhaps the most convincing story yet of a possible Thunderbird encounter takes us back into Illinois in the middle of July 1977. At around 9 p.m. in the small town of Lawndale, a group of 3 young boys were out playing in their backyard. Ruth Lowe, the mother of the young boy of Marlin, was inside the home tidying up when she heard yelling coming from the boys outside. She rushed outside and was shocked to see 2 large birds attacking the boys. The 2 large birds were trying to pick up her son and fly off with him. Luckily, Marlin was a bit too heavy for the pair of giant birds, and after attempting to carry the young boy off the ground for a few feet, the birds gave up and flew off into the sky. Ruth and Marlin both went straight to the police station to report the incident. Ruth claimed the birds managed to lift young Marlin 2 feet into the air and carry him so far as 35 feet. The birds had white rings around its half-foot-long neck, the rest of the body with black feathers. The bird's beaks were 6 inches in length and hooked at the end, and the talons were long, with 3 in the front and 1 in the back. Each wing were about 4 feet at the least, from body to tip. This claim, being as bizarre as it sounds, was met with ridicule from the police and later some residents of their small town. Ruth stood firm though, adamant that what had happened did in fact happen. The description Ruth gave to the police was a very exact one. Many people believe, in her state of panic of saving her boy, and with her giving such an exact description of the birds, shows she wasn't truthful, as panic and adrenaline would have taken over and those small details would have been near unnoticeable. The claim Ruth gave of giant monstrous birds attacking her son may be an interesting story at the very least, but the exact description of the bird she gave may be the downfall of these birds being related to the Thunderbird. The description Ruth Lowe provided us actually matches up to a well-known bird. Though this bird is not nearly as large as an ancient god, it is quite massive. The Andean condor, a large vulture primarily found in South America, matches the description of the bird Ruth gave to the police. Although the chances of finding one, let alone a pair of them, all the way in Illinois is very rare. The next guess of what kind of bird it could have been would have been maybe a California condor. Though it doesn't quite match the description as well as the Andean condor, it is very similar. But a reason why it probably wasn't the California condor either is because they nearly went extinct in the 1980s, making the fact that a pair of them making their way across the country very unlikely. The Andean and the California condors are 2 of the largest flying birds in the world. Though they live far from Illinois and are both vultures, they would probably not fly thousands of miles to attack a very much alive young boy. Perhaps the best guess of what the bird Ruth and Marlin saw that day would be a golden eagle, who do inhabit the state of Illinois. Though the description doesn't match of what Ruth had claimed, it would be the next best guess. Unless, of course, what attacked Marlin wasn't a bird that we know of. Perhaps Ruth and Marlin saw that day was in fact a pair of young thunderbirds hunting human prey, just like their ancestors once did. A theory I had of what the Thunderbird could have been at one point would have us traveling back in time to Earth's history when humans were just starting to migrate into North America during the last ice age. Humans began crossing the Bearing Strait from Asia to North America approximately between 10 to 20,000 years ago, just before the end of the last ice age. During this time in Earth's history, a massive change in the environment was occurring, displacing humans and animals, forcing them to interact and forcing them to battle for territory and food. With humans starting to inhabit North America 10 to 20,000 years ago, and the last ice age ending about 11,500 years ago, the overlap of migrating animals and humans would become a common occurrence. Both humans and large predators had to fight for survival, as migration of prey made it harder to find and hunt. I imagine humans and large predators would often come upon one another while hunting similar prey, or even trying to hunt one another, with both desperately trying to look for food. Now, if we're going to look for a bird similar to that of the Thunderbird, we can look at fossils of one particular bird found scattered all across different parts of the United States. With similar size to the reported sightings and stories of the thunderbird, same description and behavior patterns, this giant predator is my personal best guess of what the thunderbird truly was. The Teratornis. The Teratornis was an ancient bird of prey, flying in the skies the same time humans were migrating and settling down across North America. Fossils of these giant birds show us how massive they really were. Being larger than any flying bird we know of today, the Teratornis' wingspan measured to be nearly 4 meters from body to tip. Standing at 75 centimeters tall and weighing around 15 kilograms, the Teratornis was nearly twice the size of our modern-day California condor. Now, due to its massive size, it would mean instead of flying by flapping its wings over and over again, it would soar and glide through the sky, only resorting to flapping its heavy wings, to taking off and gaining some altitude, as to not to exert itself. This would match with many thunderbird sightings, as most claims of the thunderbird are of those where the bird is soaring rather than flapping its wings through the air. Being a bird of prey, and a large one at that, it would most likely be found nesting and living somewhere up high. Like eagles and the condors, their nesting grounds would be up in the mountains. If we consider their size, their weight, and the method of taking off and flying, being up high on a mountain would be the ideal place for them to live. Now, with being up high in the mountains, like perhaps Mount Katahdin, the mountain Passamaquoddies possibly climbed in the origin story, we can assume the wind currents on such a large mountain can be extreme sometimes. Perhaps the strong winds were what caused Passamaquoddy's friend to slip and fall to his death into a cleft. And if this is being the case, strong winds would greatly help a large flying bird like the Teratornis, who would rely on strong winds to soar and glide around on. Looking at pictures of Mount Katahdin, we can see the enormous slopes and the cliffs that make up the mountain, the perfect place for gusts of wind to blow into, and the perfect place for a large bird to take advantage of it. And now this leads me into another point. With a mass of air shooting up the side of the mountain, it can cause what meteorologists call orographic lifting. The higher up the mountain, the ground will capture more heat. With the cool air blowing up the mountainside and into the warmer air near the top, it can begin to form clouds and precipitation, causing thunderstorms to be more prevalent in mountainous areas. These points I'm making now lead me to this conclusion. From the fossils found, the Teratornis is proven to be a monstrous bird. To the early human settlers in those days, the Teratornis would be a very elusive predator to them. Stories for the past 100 years of giant birds attacking animals and people still pop up from time to time. The tombstone incident of one circling a herd of cattle, and the pair of birds trying to snatch up the young boy Marlin in Illinois, it makes people wonder if there might still be a bird out there, similar to the Teratornis, hunting us. Sightings of the thunderbird are somewhat similar in its behavior of how the Teratornis would have acted and lived, gliding through the sky with little wing flapping and using the wind to its advantage to get around. Living up high in the mountains like Mount Katahdin, as to live away from other animals and humans who would otherwise disturb its nest or try hunting it. With the strong winds high up in the mountains, taking off, soaring around and landing would make it a comfortable and easy environment for it to live in. And with thunderstorms being more prevalent in mountainous regions, early humans would see these giant birds flying around the high mountains using the storm winds to glide on, and seemingly bringing on the storm themselves. With it only flapping its wings a few times while flying, it could be seen as often as a crack of thunder is heard, every 15 to 30 seconds, causing settling humans to believe the wing flaps are the cause of the large booming cracks of thunder. With the Teratornis being very prevalent in North America during the same time in Earth's history, this would give early establishing tribes time to witness and to create fantastical stories of this amazing bird. I believe all these facts and all these coincidences all add up and give credence to that the Thunderbird was in fact a very real and very much alive creature. Now, with many theories, there are inconsistencies and facts that just don't quite line up. Thunderbird sightings are still occurring to this day. If the Terra Tornis was the Thunderbird, it would have had to remain hidden from us for thousands of years. The Terra Tornis is believed to have gone extinct near the end of the last ice age due to human hunting and lack of prey to be found with the climate shifting so much. This being said though, instances of animals living long past their expected extinction does happen, with hundreds of sightings around the world of ancient creatures apparently living in remote areas like the Kongomoto in the Congo, the Tombstone dinosaur, or the Titan boa living in South America. The possibility of a Terra Tornis or even an evolved descendant of the Terra Tornis might be higher than most would initially think. We can take a look at the coelacanth for a real-life example of this happening. This large fish was thought to have gone extinct in the late Cretaceous period, around 66 million years ago, though it was recently rediscovered in 1938 off the coast of South Africa, proving they still managed to survive for millions of years without us knowing about it, making them what most scientists call living fossils. With that being said, we have no idea and probably will never truly know what kind and how many sea creatures live in our vast oceans. Birds living in our skies are much easier to identify and document. Unfortunately, as much as I would like my theory to be right, the Terra Tornis being the current day Thunderbird is unlikely. But that's not to say it couldn't have been the Thunderbird thousands of years ago when the stories were first appearing. We may never really know what the Thunderbird really was. I believe my theory of the Terra Tornis being the first Thunderbird could be a possibility, though there could easily have been another ancient bird flying the skies thousands of years ago we'll never know about. Modern day sightings could also just be rare sightings of out-of-place birds like the Andean or California condors. But until someone finds a large bird shooting lightning out of its eyes, causing thunder with the flaps of its wings, and bringing on storms behind it, we may just have to keep our eyes looking upward to hopefully get a small glimpse of the legendary Thunderbird.